Dream deferred means when you have a dream, an idea of your final accomplishment to where you believe that is your peak in your lifetime, and you decide to push it off or extend the time of you being able to accomplish it because of responsibilities or upcoming events that you did not plan for. When we talk about the 5 words that he used in this poem, we can say that that's very strong words, even for, um, especially back then in that time when this poem was created. As we know that this poem was referred to black people and how the abilities of them, not just financially, but just in general, and how the percentage of colored people to have a successful life was very low. Excuse me. And when he uses dries up, festers up, crusts, sags, and explodes, each one can be uh, connected with a different aspect. Like, for example, when he says dries up, that just, in my way of thinking, it's your spirit just drying up. You losing faith. You're uh, in your mind, you think the possibilities of your dreams being accomplished are very low or none at all. Um, when it festers or when it gets infected, it's your life, your mental state is not the same anymore. It just you start to kind of lose your sanity. It crusts over or it sags. It just puts a lot of pressure on you, not just physically but mentally, especially mentally. It can affect the way you start to think and make decisions, and it could lead you off into a very bad path. It explodes your your emotions. Just at some point in time, they would have to be released, and not always can it be a positive way that they are being released. Um, Lori Hansberry, Lorraine, sorry, um, picked a line like a raisin in the sun for the title of her little story, and it's very interesting because it ties in a lot of ways. As we see throughout the story, we see Walter just the 5 words that Hugis I don't know how to pronounce his name well. Sorry. The way he chooses those 5 words, we can see in each part of the story how those words start to come into effect, and see how it affects not only him and his mental state and his character and like his mood, uh, his emotions, but like how it starts to affect everyone around him. And we can see that for a while, it's just the story becomes very bitter, very one-sided, and we can see that they weren't on that side that was very fortunate. The way I see these 5 key words connect into the play is mainly throughout Walter, and not just Walter, but the connection between his family, and not just the connection between his family, but like the way he pictures, or the way the story pictures society back then. We could clearly see how um, Walter explodes because of his emotions are not stable, and we can see how it festers in a very toxic way. The way it sags or it burdens him, not just him, because he feels like he is, like we said in classroom one day, he's like a man, but he's a kid trapped in a man's body at times because he feels like no one's listening to him. The way it dries up because he got money stolen from him, and not just part of it, but basically all of it. And there was a line where it says that check was made up of his father's blood and flesh. And as we know, because that check was given to the family because of the father's death. Um, and we can see how harsh it was for uh, black and colored people's lives back then, where white people were willing to pay and buy the property that he was planning to move in with his family in a white neighborhood, all because of skin and racial profiling. And they just felt like they didn't want them to live there. And it was very frustrating for him, not just him, but his whole family, especially since his wife was expecting another baby. um and all these, in the way that I see it applies it in a real life situation. Me personally, it's been with my family. When we were, or when I was smaller, I'd say it was very complicated for all of us, since we didn't come from a wealthy family, and we by no means had vast, big amounts of money saved up in the bank. So we would always see the oldest of the family, which would be my mother, my aunts, um, and sometimes even like older cousins, uh, just sacrifice their sacrifice their life and their education to be able to maintain and help the people. And as a little kid, I remember see the frustrations in their eye. I remember to see uh, how all of this stress can get to them, and they would be worried whether they would have enough money to pay either the next check, the next bill, sorry, or the next meal. And especially for my mother, who had me, and as a single parent, it was very hard. When I think of all the other possibilities or outcomes of this story to come to an end, it's I can see various ways it can end in a happy way, but me personally, I feel like it would be a very short-lived happiness. Um, for example, the way that they moved in, let's say that white people in the neighborhood would welcome them with open hands. That doesn't mean that later on in the future, for generations to come, or even a couple of weeks, months, years to come, um, other people that maybe potentially could move into the neighborhood would see them and welcome them in the same way. It's very hard, especially back then, and even nowadays. You don't see it nowadays as much, but throughout just the course of time, colored people have always been looked at in a certain way more than um, a white man could be. When I'm talking about color and race and ethnicity and just culture in general, people who tend to be from outside are viewed differently when they're inside. Um, and if you ask me, do I agree with all of this? Um, yes, I do. I do believe that um, by you pushing off your dreams, by you bottling up so much emotion, so much negativity, so much pressure by yourself, and not having a way to let it out, can be the downfall of you. Can be what triggers you to make a mistake in life, and can very well be the same thing that would destroy you from accomplishing that dream. And this kind of reminds me of The Great Gatsby. You know how Gatsby was um, so tunneled vision in accomplishing his dream with Daisy, but he was basically sacrificing everything else just to accomplish that dream. But you But if you're from an outside view, you can see clearly that that wasn't a dream. It was more of a suicidal mission. But since he was so in love, he didn't see it that way. Or, matter of fact, he couldn't see it because he was so blinded. And in the end, he died chasing the dream that he never had, all because he couldn't face reality. And by us facing reality at times is better than chasing a dream or chasing a lie that is covered up as a dream.